Hello and welcome. Steve again with Frank Du. Frank, focal point coaching and training consultant, um, marvelous business coach with an area of expertise regarding giving guidance and advice to entrepreneurs that are caregivers, that have the unique challenges of needing to care for a family member as they're building their business. We all have personal obligations, obviously, and family obligations as we build our business. But those of us who have to go the extra step and provide an extra measure of care find the challenges to be even more unique. So we're grateful to have Frank with us to share his expertise on that. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Appreciate it.
You are welcome. So far we've covered in a few episodes the unique challenges faced by an entrepreneur when caring for a parent. Today, Frank, we're going to focus on caring for a spouse. So I'm going to ask you to start off by, if you could, compare and contrast those challenges faced by an entrepreneur. How are they different and how are they similar when caring for a spouse instead of a parent?
Well, it's a great question. And I'd say starting off with the similarities really is the typical lack of self-care that the entrepreneur gives for themselves while trying to take care of either a parent or a spouse. Like we mentioned in other episodes, you're spinning so many different plates as an entrepreneur. You have to take care of your clients, your customers, your vendors, your employees, as well as yourself. And so usually just from the business side of things, the individual puts themselves at the end of that list. Then when you bring in caring for somebody close to you, like a parent, for an example, then there's a lot of pull and urgency to be able to step up and take care of those people. And it usually takes away from that person's own self-care. That in itself is one of the biggest similarities, I'll say, with taking care of a spouse that needs long-term care as well. And so same problem occurs. But one of the big differences there is, in many cases, a parent does not live with you. In some cases they do, but in many cases they don't. And so at some point you get to sort of exit from that situation. In most cases that I've come across, although there's been a few that don't fit into that category, that spouses live together. And so, the entrepreneur is busy running their business, spinning all their plates, and then they come home and they have to take care of their spouse as well. There's no break. And so similar to, again, the parent situation, we focused a lot on trying to make sure that the entrepreneur brings to bear a lot of other relationships to help ease the burden of the care. So then when the entrepreneur themselves are spending time with their parents, then they can be there emotionally for them, because, that is probably the biggest influence that you can have when taking care of somebody, is to be there emotionally for them. So conversely, with a spouse situation, if you're just constantly caring for them for all their needs, you usually have not very much left to give on the emotional side of things. And because, the emotional side of things is a different relationship with your spouse than with your parents. So that in itself is a huge change. And with that change, one of the things that I see often is, you, especially as the entrepreneur, in many times they're responsible for the entire income in the house. And so as that relies on the entrepreneur taking care of themselves to be able to keep doing that. And so, one of the things that I see, you probably see it a lot, is also where, the entrepreneur is busy doing that, trying to make a living and bringing in the income into the house, but yet they themselves have not protected their own financial security as well. Have you noticed that?
protected their own financial security against what, unexpected expenses?
Or even their health, because when you think of being sort of pulled from both ends, pulled on the side of the business as well as the caregiving side, their health starts to drop. And so, what I'm thinking of in particular, there's so many entrepreneurs that don't have disability insurance, for an example. And so what happens, or, they have a heart attack, cancer, stroke, one of the big three that happen, because of the lack of self-care, now they're also put into a situation that their income is at risk as well. That's what I was talking about.
I get that for sure. The early in my career when I started working with business owners for life insurance, I'd come across a lot of guys with various ailments, colitis or depression or anxiety, and many of them would refer to it, what's the reason for this? It's business. This is a business stress. Business causes stress. Right. So on top of that, to have the extra stress of a caregiver, yeah, it makes you more exposed and more vulnerable to a long illness or a disability. And right. And if they don't have the insurance in place, then they're in big trouble. Who's going to care for them? They need money to pay for that. That's exactly
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. That plus the whole addition that, in many situations, they're the sole income earner for the house.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge risk.
Huh. Okay. So you talked a little bit about the need for self-care kind of falling through the cracks. Those entrepreneurs that are succeeding in caring for themselves, how are they doing it?
Well, they're empowering the people around them. And so, as an entrepreneur, being a caregiver, having the caregiver hat or not, um, to be really successful is to also make sure that you're not alone, and to bring in, we talked about that actually in the elder version as well, to bring to bear the people and the relationships around you. Could be your customers, could be your family. I mean, not customers, but employees and your family, to uh, sort of do some of the things that you don't need to do to alleviate some of the time for you to be more effective on both roles.
Okay, so you need a support team. Um, what about addressing mindset, emotional resilience? What sources have you seen entrepreneurs go to ratchet up their game and their mindset?
That's a great question. There's a lot of talk media about mindset, and when it comes right down to it, I can remember years ago, a doctor told me that the best thing that you could do for your mindset, for your health, for your depression, for anything that's going on, is to go for a walk. And so, what he was saying though was really, one of the biggest aspects of mindset is personal health. So if you take care of your health, you'll have greater confidence and greater abilities and greater enthusiasm, greater energy to keep your head on straight for all the challenges and constraints that pop up in business.
Yes, and of course, the walking would clear the mind, promote circulation, calm the body. I get that. And it's an interesting thing because we're very health conscious these days, and I'm sure that a lot of people that run businesses um, are health conscious and work out. Why is it though that they kind of drop the ball when they become a caregiver? How is it that somebody who may go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week all of a sudden stops when they become a caregiver?
Yeah, it goes back to um, the connection, especially with your spouse, that when you're in that situation and you see your spouse struggling and hurting, that you want to fix it as best you can, as fast as you can, and as often as you can. And so gradually over time, you find that you just end up not spending any time in yourself because you're so focused on helping them. And so ultimately, though, it's similar to when you're a little kid and you learn, you put your hand on the stove and you realize that, oh, I'm going to burn myself, so I don't put my hand on the stove, so I don't burn myself anymore. When your spouse is um, in great need of care, if you put yourself in that same situation, it's like you putting your hand on the stove as well as they're putting their hand on the stove. So it doesn't make the situation any better. And so to really to have that clarity to step back and to say, I need to take care of myself so I can take care of my spouse is really, really hard to do, because the heartstrings really pull you into wanting to take care of the urgent things that are right in front of you. And so especially, you come home, I'll just paint a picture. You come home and your spouse is really upset for whatever reason, something happened that day, not feeling extra poorly that day. And so everything that you had in your own mind just goes by the wayside, and you just want to make it better. And so over a long period of time, that takes a toll on you.
Wow, so your love and devotion for your spouse in a way works against you.
It can, yeah, if you're not careful, for sure.
So I imagine that when the entrepreneurs realize that, and they realize they can only do so much, and they realize that they're suffering in the process, I imagine there's a whole lot of guilt that sets in. Do you think?
That's the first thing that popped into my mind when you started that sentence, for sure. Yeah, the guilt of not being able to make it better all the time and not being there for them all the time, which is unreasonable. But yet, obviously, you want the best for your spouse, and so when you can't, change everything, just there's no magic wand here. It's just a matter of consistency and then also when it comes to the opportunity of having the clarity and recognizing who else you can bring into that picture to alleviate some of the responsibilities that you've taken on in the care of your spouse. So, because back to the emotional connection, they really want you, not necessarily everything that you can do for them.
I get that, but it seems to me that the caregiving entrepreneur would still feel guilty if he got somebody else to come in a few days a week to help out, because they'd be thinking that should be me, right?
Yeah, yeah, no question. But that said, uh, the sustainability of you doing everything is not realistic. And so at some point, back to the health issue, you're not going to be any good to your spouse if you yourself are compromised. If you have a heart attack, what, I don't know the exact, you'll probably be better at this than I am, but many times the first time that you realize that you have heart disease is when you die of a heart attack.
Yeah.
And it's not a great time to find out. And so, you know, that is the result of consistent, persistent stress. And so I would say that your spouse is better off with you alive and healthy and able to help them. So the mindset comes back to that for you as well as the entrepreneur, that to recognize that you also have to take care of yourself first before you take care of others, even if you feel guilty about that. You'd feel even worse if you were incapacitated because you didn't take care of yourself. Now you're incapacitated and you can't take care of that person that's important to you.
Yeah, I get that. You're the online, you're the first responder, and you need to be able to remain available for the next time you're needed.
The other piece that we didn't talk about yet, which is probably because of our age, is the children situation. And so, if assuming that you're younger and you're an entrepreneur and you're taking care of your spouse in a caregiving situation and you have children, and regardless of the age of the children, I mean, there's each age group of children have their own challenges, but add the caregiving on the spouse on top of that, it becomes a very unmanageable situation really quickly.
Huh. So what do people end up doing?
Well, again, usually in a lot of cases, sadly to say, a lot of marriages break up. A lot of problems happen with the kids because of behavioral problems, and so really, that's when you as an entrepreneur have the responsibility to enlist the people around you to help you. And so, just like with the even though it's the spouse that may need the caregiving, it's also the kids that need your attention. And so, to be emotionally present for your children and emotionally present for your spouse, it's important that you're not also the one that does every single thing around the house.
I get that. What a situation to be in. My last question is this: for those entrepreneurs that are halfway, somewhat fully successful at pulling this off as a caregiver entrepreneur, have you seen any common characteristics among them? Or for instance, do they typically practice a form of religion? Are they athletes? Or do they have some kind of spiritual pursuit? Anything in common?
That's a great question. I would say one of the biggest commonalities is their awareness. And so when they have the awareness that they're in a situation that is, very taxing, then to bring that awareness and to deal with it through those means. So deal with it through physical exercise, deal with it through groups, deal with it through religion, support groups, all that sort of thing. It starts with the recognition of and the awareness of the fact that they need some help. And so that would be the first step of the entire process. And then for each person, they seem to find their own way, what works for them best. But having a group of people in a community around you, if that's through religion or if it's through your neighborhood, it's through your family, it's through your friends. The community is super important when you go through that. And one of the problems that I find with many entrepreneurs is they're so driven and so control oriented that they don't let people in. And that's when they come to that awareness that they need help and they have the courage to ask for help, then they'll get the help and things get better.
That's a very important point, Frank. And I also get your point about what the meditators would call mindfulness. If you're mindful of your situation, and then you can work through it. But if you don't give yourself the recognition of this is what I'm dealing with, it'll remain swept under the rug or in the back burner and just eat away at you.
Exactly. And it's you can liken it to addictions, for an example. If you don't realize you have a problem with a particular substance, then you're probably not going to get better. The second you become aware of that, then now you can get help. And so it's similar to that.
So I imagine then that in your consultation with caregiver entrepreneurs, one of your chief goals is promoting mindfulness, helping
No
them become
question.
acutely aware of what they're up against.
Every day. And as entrepreneurs, we need to guard our confidence. And our confidence comes through that mindfulness and intention. And also when you empower the people around you to help you, that also builds your own confidence. And in turn, it grows the positivity within you. And to be mindful of that, whatever it takes, because you need balance in your life, and just going out full out with your business and full out at home caregiving is not balance.
I get that. And I also appreciate your stress on team building and having a community support. Well, are there any last comments or points you'd like to make for today?
Well, one other aspect of the spousal caregiving situation is, depending on when it comes in, that situation is never easy. But it's quite different from the parent situation because it's likely that they're, your contemporary. They're the same age as you, give or take, whereas the parent is likely going to predecease you. potentially you're with this person for a long time, hopefully for a long time. And that whole dynamic, and especially when you have kids on top of that, to build a life together, what's the balance from acceptance to what is, and the drive to make things better? And so sometimes we drive to make things better to the point that we actually drive ourselves to distraction and end up making things worse. And so, again, back to the mindfulness and the awareness of that and what your intention is and how to live your best life with gratitude. And, in every situation, if you see it or not, there's a gift or opportunity. And so to be able to have the clarity and the mindfulness to see what the gift or opportunity is in each and every day is one of the biggest strengths that you could leave with.
Beautifully said. Well, Frank, you've enlightened us once again, and I know that you are providing comfort to people who are faced with this challenge, and I really appreciate your advice and counsel.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for joining us. Stay tuned for our next episode.